S:/SNSEP is intended as a brave experiment in input-output cinema, whatever that is supposed to be.
S:/SNSEP has been built with the mythopoetic psychocosmology of Robert E. Howard's sword and sorcery stories in mind.
S:/SNSEP's aesthetic concept is the
S:/SNSEP is a link to the past. S:/SNSEP is a first effort, and so yes, it's a bit experimental. S:/SNSEP's aesthetic concept is the archetype. S:/SNSEP is a mystical thing that I don't really understand, but I think S:/SNSEP's aesthetic concept is the archetype of mystical thing that I don't really understand. Hey, Paul. I'm trying to put myself back where I was in early 2011. I'm in college, and I have aspirations of being a game developer, and I have no idea how to start. Video games seem like an infinite, untapped artistic frontier, despite the fact that the industry is still firmly in its brown cover shooter phase. Folks in respected publications are talking seriously about fun and flow and ludonarrative dissonance. Games can be anything. That's when Superbrothers Sword Sworcery EP with songs and sounds by Jim Guthrie hits me. I remember it as a time when it felt like my potential was as limitless, or maybe just as untested, as the potential of games. Sorcery on its surface is a pretty straightforward revival of DOS-era point-and-click games, updated with the gimmicks of a then-new gaming platform, the iPad. In 2011, tapping your screen for a point-and-click game is novel. Rotating your device is novel. Tweeting is novel. In 2023, our relationship with these gimmicks has changed somewhat. It's the presentation that makes sorcery enduring. I'm sure much of this discussion is going to be us swooning over Jim Guthrie's unmatched songs and sounds, but before we actually start playing, I wanted to ask you about where you were in early 2011, before Skyrim and Portal 2 and Bastion and Minecraft and Dark Souls. What was your relationship with games?
Hello, Kevin. In 2011, I was recently laid off from my job at gamervision.com, my first real job and entry into the games industry. I was unemployed, I was riddled with imposter syndrome, and I was honestly feeling pretty jaded by the news and PR aspects of gaming. As far as where my mind was with games themselves, I was disillusioned. I'm with you, indie games are exciting. Super Meat Boy reminds me why I love tight platformers. Braid is keeping games smart. And Fez is like this gleaming gem descending from space that I'm waiting to catch and greedily study every secretive facet. But also AAA games are brown and very online and very competitive. The Wii has lost its schoolyard novelty. I'm playing World of Warcraft and the Old Republic less because they're good games, but more as an attempt to maintain a grasp on youthful freedom, on the carefree relationships I just spent my early and mid-20s cultivating. They are a lifeline. I was also 2 years into a project that to this point has been a constant in my life for 14-ish years. Continue was both an excuse to keep hanging out with GamerVision friends like WoW and Tor, but also a fun reason to dive backward into electronic entertainment history and explore the games that I thumbed over advertisements for in GamePro and EGM as a teenager. As for Superbrothers Sword Sworcery, it was a game entirely off my radar. I wasn't interested in using my phone or my iPad as a gaming device. One, because I didn't own an iPad, I was too poor, and two, because phones honestly scared the hell out of me. I thought they were insidious mind devices that if you invited into your brain palace, they would act as like a thought vampire and suck you dry. It wasn't until 2012 when I saw Indie Game the movie and heard Guthrie's score that the game even entered my field of vision. I loved the chunky pixels, the gauzy bloomed lighting. The character designs were quite appealing with those lanky-danky proportions, but it was the music that stuck with me. Even today, it's the only aspect of the game that I've ever engaged with. I'm excited to start. Can we play the game now?
We can, why don't we just enjoy the quiet?
It's interesting that you bring up diving backward into electronic entertainment history with Continue, because sorcery is drenched in longing for video games of old. Blatant Zelda references, chunky top sirloin pixels, retro textured triangle waveforms. The game looks backward as much as it looks forward. I wonder if the developers were as impatient with the now of 2011 as we were. Anyway, yeah, we should start. Lucky for us in our format, the game basically comes pre-curated. When you start the game, you'll meet a narrator, the archetype, who will ease you into the game's vibe. At the end of the first session, as the game calls it, the archetype will check back in with you. We can stop there and talk about what's going on. Enjoy.
When I sit on a beach, I look out at the water and I imagine what it must have been like to sit at the edge of this ocean, in this exact spot, 1,000 years ago. Without the modern trappings of plastic recliners and cell phones and suntan lotions, with no knowledge of what lies on the other side of anything, I certainly feel small. I am adequately humbled. But I do know what's on the other side. I understand my place in geography on this earth, in this universe. And with that, something vital is lost. The awe-inspiring aspect of this view is diminished. I think the only place truly left for us to find that feeling is inside or far, far outside in space, which seems like a fading dream at this point. So we turn to music, movies, books, games, where we can fully lose ourselves in a mysterious whole. I think that's the promise a game like Superbrothers Sword Sworcery makes. This first 30 minutes promised remote locations, eerie dungeons, and towering ringwraith skelemans that chase you for breaking their holy stuff. The bar is set. I'm struck by the small moments the game gives you to stop and rest in the natural ambiance. That opening bass riff that reminds me of the first track off of Pink Floyd's Metal. The other track that sounds like some absolutely vintage John Carpenter music. And of course, the nonchalant dialogue. I'm intrigued by the combat. Do I sense maybe a rhythm element to the fighting? Okay, I'm excited to hear the first impressions of your revisit.
We are profoundly grateful that you have chosen to participate in this experimental treatment for acute soul sickness.
This line hits me. The brilliance of Sorcery's writing is that they couch these perfect, transcendent little phrases in hyper-casual Adventure Time speak. Soul sickness. What a phrase. Almost sounds psychological. The archetype, our narrator here, seems to be a reference to 19th century Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. Let me just type something into a search bar real quick.
Deviation from the truths of the blood begets neurotic restlessness, and we've had about enough of that these days. Restlessness begets meaninglessness, and the lack of meaning in life is a soul sickness whose full extent and full import our age has not yet begun to comprehend.
Okay, so my interpretation of this is that they are saying Superbrothers Sword and Sworcery EP with songs and sounds by Jim Guthrie and video games as a whole are perhaps a treatment for meaninglessness.
What do you think about the stars in the sky?
It's okay, I guess. Yeah, they're cool.
Video games give us a purpose in a world that doesn't. Or maybe they can train us to act as though we have meaning. Sorcery goes about this treatment process quietly, gently. You have an epic, murkily defined quest, and you do swing a sword on occasion, but the lion's share of your time in sorcery is spent walking, waiting, listening, noticing, petting Dogfella, interrogating worthless sheep. What I think sorcery is doing with all this gentle, curated, negative game space is teaching us to breathe. It's not trying to constantly put puzzles or quests in front of us. We have one quest. We have easy puzzles. The trick is being curious enough to keep walking and being present enough to notice the puzzles when they're there. Sorcery is a rare game where we can poke the bushes and nothing helpful comes of that. The vast majority of bushes are pokeable. You can poke the bushes because the bushes are nice to poke. We spend a lot of our time on Earth walking, waiting, listening, noticing. petting dogs and looking at one worthless sheep or another. It's hard to feel important doing these things. Sorry, it's hard to not feel meaninglessness doing these things. It's especially hard as a human removed a few centuries from Jung, when even he was like, it's probably bad that the more we know about the universe, the more worthless we feel. I bet that won't go well. Buddy, it doesn't. But sorcery makes those normal things important because we know we're here for a reason. And at the end, there's a job we have to do, even if it's not clear what it all means yet. And in between, we can poke the bushes. So maybe sorcery is that treatment for the small feeling you get staring into the horizon and knowing too much about what lies beyond. Maybe it's meant to stimulate your imagination pathways because that's truly our only defense against the gently breathing, encroaching darkness. We have to learn how to survive in the frontier of the mind. We have to be imaginative enough to think there might be something to all this.
Dang. Okay, hi Kevin, it's me again. That Carl Jung pull is fantastic. That's like the main thread of this game. Jung's Red Book, which was published in 2009 and perfectly timed to permeate out into the dev's brain while they cook this game up, is directly name-dropped in the credits of the game. The credits are 100% worth clicking through. In fact, I think they might even be required clicking. There's a pre-written tweet review of the game provided in the credits, which dovetails nicely with exactly what we're trying to do with this show right here. S:/SNSEP has been created with a broad, literate audience in mind. A term keeps popping up that feels distinctly Jungian.
Our research shows that prolonged exposure to the mythopoetic psychocosmology of S:/S and SEP can have adverse side effects.
Mythopoetic psychocosmology. So I logged into the wikipedia.com page for mythopoetic thought. This quote really struck me.
According to the Frankfurts, ancient Egyptians and Mesopotamians lived in a wholly mythopoetic world. Each natural force, each concept was a personal being from their viewpoint. In Egypt and Mesopotamia, the divine was comprehended as immanent. The gods were in nature.
When the Egyptians and Mesopotamians and other peoples looked out upon the natural world, it wasn't just a pretty sight. It was church. They looked out onto vistas and they saw the faces of their gods. And then the Greeks came along and spoiled it all.
Instead of seeing each event as an act of will, they developed a notion of impersonal, universal law. They finally abandoned mythopoetic thought, postulating impersonal laws behind all natural phenomena.
Bummer. And finally, a little quote from Jung himself on the matter.
It is, of course, ironical that I, a psychiatrist, should, at almost every step of my experiment, have run into the same psychic material, which is the stuff of psychosis, and is found in the insane. This is the fund of unconscious images which fatally confuse the mental patient. But it is also the matrix of mythopoeic imagination which has vanished from our rational age. Though such imagination is present everywhere, it is both tabooed and dreaded, so that it even appears to be a risky experiment or a questionable adventure to entrust oneself to the uncertain path that leads into the depths of the unconsciousness.
The depths of the unconscious mind, of which S:/SNSEP seems very concerned. We begin chapter 2 with the megatome. We unlock its powers and we can read characters' minds. And comically, these are laid out like a Twitter scroll, a bit of humor that is both fun and satirical, but also puts an unfortunate timestamp on the game. You can actually sign into Twitter and tweet these things. This pulls me right back to 2009, when joking about Twitter as being a place for people to, quote, write about what they had for breakfast was a fresh topical opinion. Surely no one on this site will ever utilize it to make true art, to write a script for a movie, to communicate during emergencies and social movements, and to expand the consciousness of humanity. This game is also very concerned with the expansion of consciousness. It examines it through music and the contemplation of nature, and while sleeping in a dark room by a cozy fire as we enter a dreamscape. The B-side flip to the dreamscape dimension is such a fun thematic moment, and also wildly appropriate that these events occur in the same exact physical location, but also impossibly far away or just outside of the character's normal perceptions and experience. It's spooky action at a distance. After we unlock the Megatome's powers, the archetype has these thoughts on his mind.
Setting includes the comfort, security, and warmth of the room or outdoor environment where the experience will occur.
Positing the game as a psychoactive experience. Using the term set and setting, a distinctly psychopharmaceutical term, really struck me. Now we're firmly in Paul's territory, drugs. Just kidding. Sort of.
Such a benevolence.
What do you mean?
I feel very benevolent. I mean, I feel as though I have no enemies in the world, and this is very lovely.
We release 3 sonorous sprites from their quiet natural spaces of rest, and Logfella invites us to join him in the dreamscape to find his lost key, a mental fetch quest. We encounter a bear man creature who naked dances unselfconsciously in the moonlight. We also encounter the mushroom item for the first time, an item that's only use at the moment is to produce light psychedelic visuals. Perhaps it'll have some use later. My first instinct was to use it in locations with the sonorous sprites to potentially uncover breadcrumbs to their puzzle solutions. It may have worked. Then we have the gold trigon. The archetype drops a beautiful Al Jaffe, the Mad Magazine cover folding artist reference, proving this game can run the gamut of highbrow and lowbrow. Precisely my shit. Rest in peace, Comics King. This fight kinda rocks. It's what this game promised. The music is transcendent. My sense of self fades as unknowable geometry hits its bit-crushing heights. I'm not thinking about my bills, about feeding myself or my cats, my existential dread. I watch the blue hue circle slowly shrink inward, toward another health boost. I am the Scythian. My heart rate is noticeably elevated on my wristwatch's HR monitor chart. This fight killed me 3 times, which feels perfectly appropriate in the story arc sense. Also in the sense that the fight has 3 phases, and that 3 is an archetypal number in myth, religion, and storytelling. And when the fight ends, we are returned to the archetype, who explains this is just the beginning of our journey. I'm excited for my qualities of perceptiveness, intuition, and perseverance to be further challenged and evaluated. Also, even Dogfella grows weary of life's mundanity. Someone let that little guy poke a bush.
Paul. I like this undercurrent of acknowledgement that even though we have refrigerators and penicillin, being a today person in the rational age is actually kind of hard. The average person is straining against the natural limits of human existence processing. It sounds like mythopoeic thought was the Windows 95 of understanding the world, and now we have to update to the latest version of understanding, but our hardware remains the same. We're overclocking, and it stresses us out. With that in mind, Sorcery's goals as a video game seem to be kind of like running our brain in safe mode. Maybe they're suggesting the therapy we're undergoing, our immersion in this fantasy world, is a way to return our brains to the mythopoeic understanding of the world. Being a now person isn't the absolute worst, though, as Sorcery reminds us. I think it's at least a little nice how rational age folks can find a thunderstorm cozy and not have to worry about the emotional state of the gods. Longfellow's tweet wishing for video games was some sort of Hygge Schadenfreude cocktail that hit my brain. Maybe mythopoeic folks and rational age folks both got stressed out and scared and felt like the world was way too much sometimes. Just in different ways. Just as Longfellow yearns for an age of video games to comfort him as the maelstrom rages, so too do we yearn for a mythopoeic age of living in the mountains and wondering instead of knowing. That brings me to Twitter. In 2011, in Sorcery, Twitter is woven into the magical fabric of the world. It's a strange new part of life. In 2023, in the reality dimension, Twitter is part of our maelstrom. I won't ramble on about how Twitter sucks now. That's what Twitter is for. I'll just say that though the Twitter integration is eye-roll worthy now, there was a time when it was kind of neat. The 140 character limit to the dialogue is a sort of techno-poetry that fits the game's vibe very well. If I really, really concentrate, I can even force myself to miss the good old days of posting garbage on Twitter. These days, I mostly poke my head in with the vain hope that all there is to see is someone talking about a halfway decent breakfast. My hopes are often dashed fairly quickly. On set and setting, I think my greatest lament for this experiment is that we currently cannot play Sorcery as it was when it released. We're both playing it on desktop because here in March of 2023, an iOS update has made Sorcery unplayable on mobile devices for the last month with no knowledge of a fix incoming. We are doomed to always be making things now. Part of making things now means it is currently logistically difficult to sit on a park bench and play Sorcery, with the early spring sunlight warming you and the late winter wind chilling you. If you get the chance in a future now, I recommend you play the game outside for a bit. This is an orphan thought, but I have lived in this game's soundtrack for longer than I have lived in this game. It has been so long since my last playthrough that I forgot you cannot experience the true brilliance of Guthrie's sounds and songs by listening to the music on YouTube. You have to experience the dynamic tracks. You have to experience them at all costs. The Maelstrom, parentheses in-game version, kicks the Maelstrom, parentheses album version's ass. On threes, I am noticing more of them this playthrough. The three-eyed wolf, the three-eyed sprites, and the three shapes that make up the world. Squares, circles, and triangles. Triangles seem to represent divinity. They're only seen in the trigons and in the stars that compose the Scythians' hit points. Squares are base and earthly. The landscapes and people and wolves and worthless sheep are all represented as pixel art. Squares on squares. Clouds, sprites, rainbows, and magic are all circles, and I struggle to interpret a unifying meaning from this shape. Perhaps magic is the meaning. I died twice in my fight against the gold trigon. I did not expect my heart rate to go up, but it did. Something about the experience of knowing the attack is coming and waiting for it triggers a pleasant anxiety, a combination of words I have not thought of post-lockdown. It's the same thing Dark Souls does, but Dark Souls wants to do that wait and attack thing 30 times every minute. Sorcery is patient by comparison. I like that the Scythian is anti-aliased when defeated. I usually feel defeated when I see anti-aliased pixel art. It's a mucky, murky, shouldn't be kind of feeling. That's defeat. That's dying. Probably. My first death against the Trigon was a splash of cold water. I remember all the sonorous sprite puzzles, and I cruised effortlessly through the fish, sheep, bird, tree, clicking, and rainbow, rubbing processes. Hey, I guess Freud is here as well as Jung. I think this interaction felt less like jacking it when it was on a touchscreen. Moving my whole arm with the mouse was, evocative. My second death against the Trigon made me laugh because I was trying to screenshot the end stage of the fight, and I got one hit KO'd for my trouble. I actually caught the exact moment I died. I did not know them lasers were deadly. I laughed out of mild frustration, but the game was right to kill me in one hit at the end of a long boss fight. It was right to make me do it again, but better this time. I have a small motorcycle called a Honda Super Cub. I enjoy riding that motorcycle. A lot of my friends are hesitant to support my motorcycling dalliances. Motorcycles make them nervous because motorcycling is dangerous. What I like about riding my small, dangerous motorcycle is that the only thing I really have to do is pay attention 100% to riding the motorcycle. That means being safe, being defensive, looking at the road ahead, judging the intent of fellow drivers, not having an ego about being passed or tailgated, being present. It means a lot of things. If I don't pay attention 100% to riding a motorcycle, there's a chance that I could be maimed or die. So I pay attention. And it's very freeing. After riding my motorcycle for a while, I am a nice kind of mentally tired. It's a kind of mental tiredness that can be sideloaded with other tiredness and not take up any additional space. At the end of this chapter, Sorcery gives me a small version of that mental tiredness as a reward for taking it seriously. My only job in that fight was to pay attention. I let my attention lapse because I was thinking about something else. I was thinking about writing about the moment I was supposed to be paying attention to, and I got killed for it. So I thanked the game for calling me out, and then I got me a Trigon. The next chapter of the game is going to be a little more esoteric, I think. I'm interested to see if it will be a smooth process getting through the remaining 59% of this game. I certainly got stuck around here my first time through, but then again, at the time, my brain wasn't done growing. One last thought. I love the grizzled boar. I was happy to see him and his weird dick again.
Kevin, I had already forgotten that this game was native to the iPad and iPhone. I totally just read set and setting as a drug illusion. Probably because when this game released, I was more interested in drugs than iPads and iPhones. I opened my Windows to play this part of the game, and I have taken 0 drugs. Maybe I could get a little closer to what a more normal person would have experienced while playing this game in its touch device format in 2011. We begin Chapter 3 with the instruction to observe the moods of the moon. This game is telling us to touch grass. They want us to observe the natural wonders around us. They implore us, look to the moon, be awed. I have more feelings on this moon phase mechanic, but I'll get to that shortly. First, we learn the name of our big bad, the Gogolithic Mass, a character who will act as a sort of nemesis or Mr. X for the remainder of the game. He chasing you. I felt compelled to do some research on that name. My most relevant finding, a Steam message board post, which contained a nugget of information about the tongue-in-cheek epithet. Essentially, the bio is a joke about the Anunnaki, which seems more like a troll job than a backstory. Check this.
The name Gogolithic Mass is a deliberate misspelling of the Glagolithic Mass by the Czech composer Janacek.
Janacek composed mostly choir music, and the Glagolithic Mass is written in a Slavic language used exclusively for religious ceremonies. Now, my uneducated music ass can't make much more of a connection beyond the fact that the Slavs would eventually subsume the real-world Scythian culture. Gogolithic Mass seems like an intentional reference, but my gut tells me it's more of a joke than an intellectual deep cut. I don't know, maybe Guthrie had to study the Glagolithic Mass at some point and just wanted to crack wise. Maybe they just thought it sounded funny. We're back on our Sylvan Sprite fetch quest, and I'm starting to wonder if the moon cycle-based weeks-long wait isn't just a nice excuse to go outside and look up, but also a method to separate what is ultimately a pretty repetitive portion of the game without a ton of additional mechanics. I find myself feeling rewarded with the Trigon fights after trudging through the slightly more mundane clicking puzzles. But that's kind of what a video game is, right? Rarely is a game a perfect experience of 100% entertainment bliss. Usually there's some boring video game accounting or mundane tasks you need to do. The stuff that's there to pace out the game and let your brain recuperate for a minute. That's also kind of true about meditation and other forms of inward journey. A lot of it's mundane. And then, suddenly, a ray of light leaks in, and your consciousness expands, and God pops his head in and says, "What's up?" I'm not saying fighting Trigons is like talking to God, but it's probably the most transcendent experience for me inside of this game. The music and the visual effects, the way the Scythian stands with her shield braced forward, her sword arm seemingly slack behind her as she readies a riposte. She is a seasoned warrior. She is like water. This is the closest I've ever gotten to playing a Frank Frazetta painting. I've been listening to the soundtrack on repeat for the entire day, back to back since we started, drowning myself in it. While listening to Ode to a Room, I had an inkling I'd heard these sounds before, and not because I'd listened to this soundtrack back in 2012, but because it's literally a reworked version of the Pink Room from Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Check this out. I was also excited to see that Logfella directly referenced Twin Peaks twice with this dialogue.
In my experience, there are times when owls are not what they seem, and at other times they're just plain old owls. My logs have many secrets. Secrets about sylvan sprites and impossible islands. Unfortunately, I don't speak log language.
I adore Twin Peaks, and its themes match up pretty nicely with this game. Duality and equilibrium, banality and transcendence, the light versus the dark. When something upsets the equilibrium, like the Scythian waking up the Gogolithic Mass, or the atomic bomb awakening the malign force known only as Bob, a counterweight must be applied. A drastic response is required. In both cases, a sacrifice is made. Twin Peaks owns. If you haven't seen it, you should at least watch part 8 of season 3. It won't make any sense, but just Let yourself take the ride.
Got a light. Got a light.
In my dream walking, there's a special place I will always go, a parliament of trees at the heart of the world. In my special place, I visit with a titanic hollow tree. She is a goddess long since dead who predates mankind by untold eons. Of course, I'll never tell people about these goddess tree dreams because they'll probably just call me a hippie or something.
I really relate to Girl here, about being called a hippie for believing in your intuition and the power of introspection. And it was a lot more prevalent in the early 2010s too. Things have gotten a little better in that regard these past 10 years. I also love that Logfella is waiting for me with like a big ol' hug whenever I'm ready to wake up and leave the dream dome. Also, maybe I missed the in-game or even real-world significance of this Neil Young-ass lyric. Any thoughts? Finally, Kevin, biking. I think what you're talking about relates a lot to living entirely in the present, something we can achieve through meditation, through drugs, through terrible but sometimes also pleasant life experiences, through putting ourselves into semi-perilous and perilous situations, like riding a motorcycle, riding a roller coaster, cooking with very hot oil.
If you put liquid into the hot oil, it's going to spit, cause a mess, maybe do something worse. You want to make sure it's dry, okay? Jesus Christ, guys.
And heck, even in video games.
Hey, Paul. Before you brought up the Gogolithic Mass, my only reaction to it was, cool name. Now that I have remembered that words mean things, I've decided to do a little surface scratching as a YouTube essayist with an internet connection is wont to do. Here's my reading of the Gogolithic Mass and what it may mean. Golgotha apparently means skull in Aramaic. You may have noticed the Gogolithic Mass has a skull. The suffix lithic in archaeology and geology refers to stone. Gogolithic then would mean skullstone. So it's the skullstone mass. The entrance to the Mingita is a giant stone head after all, so that could neatly explain things. The Gogolithic Mass is just an avatar of the Mingita. It is its keeper. Now, interestingly enough, Golgotha is also the name of the skull-shaped hill where Christ was crucified. I'm interested to see how far sorcery goes with the Christ comparisons, especially in its ending, of which I only remember the broad strokes. Here, in the meat of the game, we get extra helpings of walkin' and lookin'. Discovery and exploration are yielding to more intricate, fiddly moon phase manipulation puzzles. Dare I say it, the game is even playing at frustrating me a bit. We see the same locations, hoping desperately for something new. We have 2 additional Trigon fight reskins, and in between, if we're lucky, we see a funny tweet. The magic has faded a touch. I blame this frustration mostly on myself and the limitations of our current playthrough. We've got a professional, serious business YouTube essayist mindset going into this game, and that's where we stay. We can try and adopt a more innocent point of view, but even then, our heads are still on a swivel for some interesting morsel to dissect. Sorcery isn't allowed to surprise us. We can't allow anything to surprise us. And that's a shame, but kind of unavoidable. I was lucky enough to bumble into sorcery as a college kid with exceptionally wastable time. Now, in the middle of a spring weekend when I'm trying to min-max work and relaxation time in the dwindling days of my 33rd year of life, it feels a little different getting frustrated by a video game. I feel the suck a little more. But there was a time when I needed something to suck a little bit in a way I could overcome. In between dashes to the Change the Moon phase cave, I try to remind myself that essentially what we're doing when we sit down to play a video game is that we're asking to be frustrated in a very solvable way. We need the practice because the real world is willing to frustrate us in many unsolvable ways. On Logfella's tweets, "Forest needs a fire like a fire needs a tree" is a Jim Guthrie lyric, funnily enough. It also works as a succinct little explainer of the Scythian and her woeful errand. Heroes need a quest like a quest needs a hero. There is no avoiding what is about to transpire. Turns out that "no denying the evil thoughts, no denying the dragon's bite" is also a vintage 2002 deep-cut Guthrie lyric. The song seems to chronicle a heroic fall from grace, perhaps another woeful errand, with some chivalric imagery. On Girl and the radical recontextualization of owning your intuition and your introspection post-COVID lockdown, yeah, man. We all had to get down with introspection or go insane because it was just a staring contest with the void for 2.5 years. These days, I think most people understand if you're a little quirky as long as you aren't licking the seats on airplanes. Here are some scattered thoughts to round us out. You can sing a song of sorcery and touch the Gogolithic Mass's skull to freeze it in place. When it's about to be unstunned, it flashes some kind of constellation. I just managed to capture the moment, and I want to believe that constellation is important and not random, but it doesn't match anything I know of, and I looked. The Scythian hugs a dark-haired man in B-side Dreamiverse Logfella's hut. I don't think that's Logfella. He's got the same hair and beard, but his clothes are a little different, and he doesn't have an axe, and he has a little gold amulet. Also, he doesn't speak. From what I can tell, this person appears nowhere else and has no dialogue. Anyway, I love that moment. I don't know why that familiar little hug makes me sad. The Grizzled Boar encounter is a sort of mashup of two big moments from 2007 video games. Portal's Companion Cube, and Bioshock's Save or Harvest mechanic. It also ends up being kind of a link in the chain of game mechanics that will eventually lead to Undertale, the last video game ever made. Grizzled Boar is a weird, naked monster man. I'm glad we're allowed to be kind to him.
When you're lucid in a dream, you'll realize who you've imagined you are. But to identify with the dream is to become bewitched. Should you manage to stabilize your lucidity, you will be able to co-create with it, instead of fighting, resisting, and cursing it.
This is about video games, right? Video games are lucid dreams that we project in order to solve cosmological problems for ourselves, or something? Onward to martyrdom.
Before writing this, but after finishing the game, I decided to read Less Talk, More Rock, an essay and possible stealth thesis for S:/SNS EP written by the entity known as Superbrothers. Is this one writer, or is this more akin to a team-constructed PowerPoint presentation? It's hard to say. The basic premise is that video games occupy a special place in media. They appeal to our whole mind, and not just the intellect. They do this by using the language of audio and visuals and game mechanics to appeal to our brain's older methods of thinking. More iconography, less alphabet. Essentially, video games can deal directly in the mythopoeic. It also discusses the act of creation and a theory by Jordan Mechner. He says that making things basically takes place over 3 steps. 1, inspiration. 2, talk. 3, rock. We 1, get idea. 2, talk about idea. 3, rock and roll as we work on idea. But often, step 2 sucks up all the time and energy and ultimately saps the creators or the creation of all of its energy. A lot of times it's enough to kill the idea entirely before it's birthed into reality. Mechner's philosophy is to skip step 2. Just go right to step 3. Start rocking. You can make pit stops at 2 along the way as you troubleshoot. So before I spend too much time in step 2, let's talk about the game's finale. The Scythian wakes up to Logfella jostling her prone body. Her health has been reduced to a single hit point. We walk to the Trigon Grove, led by Log and Dogfella. We engage the third Trigon. A song begins to play that, in my opinion, is vaguely reminiscent of The Grid by Philip Glass for the film Koyaanisqatsi. Maybe it's just me, or maybe Guthrie was feeling some Glass inspiration, or maybe the game is spiritually connected to a dialogueless film, a tone poem about humanity and planet Earth falling out of balance. Koyaanisqatsi literally means life out of balance in the Hopi language. Koyaanisqatsi and Sword and Sworcery feel connected, in that both are less concerned with telling you an explicit story, and more concerned with evoking feelings often left dormant. We raise our sword, and the power of the Trigons unite to teleport us to Mingital, where the less capable cousins of Blinky, Pinky, Inky, and Clyde possess the body of the Gogolithic mass. We engage in Pac-Man antics. The game asks us to use everything we've learned along this final route. We sing a song of sword and sorcery to halt the Gogolithic mass's progress. We click and hold the edge of the screen to shuffle our skinny pixel legs up mountain plateaus. We fight one last evil dog. And then we emerge on the final screen. I'm calling it the kill screen, where we activate the 3 facets of the Trigon once more, stand on the peak of Mingi-Tal as spirit sprites ascend around us, and lift our sword. A final bell tolls. We lift the megatome as the background strobes. There is cacophony, like the cartridge has been ripped out of the still running system. The literal sword and sorcery EP rises before us as the whirling infinite plays. We hear children talking and playing. I don't know the significance, but it served to remind me that we've been playing, like we did as kids on the schoolyard when we engaged in a shared imaginary world with shared imaginary rules. We dreamed a shared dream. And that's it. Our woeful errand is at an end. Now we're cosmic friends forever. Okay? Roll credits. I want to write more, but endings are hard, and I already had to watch the Scythian's body slip off that waterfall. The cremation, her ashes lifting up into a clear and starry sky, remind me of the Cowboy Bebop finale. Her quest is over, and now she can rest. I suppose that we should too.
Hey, Paul. It's frankly kind of freaky that you brought up Koyaanisqatsi. I had a whole class in college that centered around Koyaanisqatsi, and I was probably taking it around the same time I was first playing sorcery. The class itself was about understanding the digital divide, how technology advances us, but not all at once, and how divisions in technology create violence. Information is a weapon, speed is violence, humanity's nature is to colonize and abuse, that sort of thing. I didn't really love the film or the class that much. I was 20 years old. I loved technology. I wanted to make video games. This was a whole class about how the speed of tech was throwing the whole world out of balance, and I didn't want to think of technology as something bad. Sorcery's connection to Koyaanisqatsi is probably no accident. It just seems to sync up too perfectly with Jung's idea of soul sickness. I guess the chaotic violence of Koyaanisqatsi is born of soul sickness on a societal level, the result of a world afflicted with neurotic restlessness. We only have computers to play video games on because we wanted to do war and capitalism faster. I can't tell if that makes sorcery as a therapy game a beautiful swords to plowshares kind of idea, or a treatment that is fundamentally corrupted by its own genesis. But I know what my professor would say. I tried as hard as a college kid could to internalize Koyaanisqatsi, but I think all I got out of it and that digital divide class was my least favorite message. We are so fucked. Anyway, here we are at the end of the road, and we're pretty fucked. The Scythian has ascended the Mingi-Ta to upload the megatome to the whirling infinite in order to destroy the Gogolithic mass. It is very apparent that she will not survive her woeful errand, and indeed, she does not. But it's good that she did it because, wait a minute. Why does she do it? Apart from ghostifying a brave adventurer here and there, what does the Gogolithic mass actually do to anyone? Longfellow remarks constantly that the Scythian's presence here has caused storms and dream nonsense all over the place. The archetype even gently mocks us for being brave for offering to martyr the Scythian. Did any of this need to happen? Well, I think the Scythian died for us. Not for our sins, but for our soul sickness. And I don't mean to say that she died to entertain us in some snarky, big-brained, we were the villains all along for wanting to play a video game kind of way. The Scythian dies for us because we are humans who are scared of death and we have no way to rehearse for it. As a heroic archetype, she can die as many times as we need her to. For the whole game, she shows us how to live with bravery and purpose, how to be merciful, how to persevere, how to act instead of think or rock instead of talk. We see her do all these things and understand them because we're doing these things with her and through her. I think that hug with Dreamworld Hut guy, that's someone she can't hug in real life anymore. She doesn't fear death because death holds all the people she loves but can't hug in real life anymore. She goes to her death having done something heroic that is may be hard to articulate. The Scythian defeats death by living well, with purpose and without fear. So should we all. That's the only real cure for soul sickness, and we can only give it to ourselves. Or play a video game and be tricked into inhabiting an archetype that lives with purpose, then consciously understand that's why we decide to play a video game in the first place. Because we're afraid of death. So that was Superbrothers Sword and Sworcery EP with songs and sounds by Jim Guthrie. Paul, I'm interested to know if this left an impression on you. Did talking about it too much kill the rock? Did having to write an essay as you played it for the first time make it feel like work? Where do we go from here? Is that ice cream place we visited on the 4th of July by your house still around?
Well, every one of them looks great.
Then try them all and knock yourself out.
Kevin, you'll be happy to know that the ice cream place just reopened for the season. We can apply the cool, creamy bomb of fudge sundaes to our soul sickness all summer long. I didn't find this process to be work most of the time. There have been work-like moments as we started, as we approached the ending, but as a journeyman overanalyzer, I think the process of chronicling the stream of mind chatter that I undergo whenever I read or watch or play or experience a thing isn't so much work as it is a molting process. You know, I had the same questions as you about the Scythian, and also kind of the same observations about Logfella's mind tweets. Things were simpler before the Scythian arrived, smoother. No one rocked the giant mass of creeping death boat. But is that a good thing? Is it okay for us to leave the deeper recesses of our soul to molder? Maybe that's how the soul sickness grows. When we engage with the world on a purely artificial or intellectual mind level. When we neglect our whole mind. Most people, myself included, feel a little uncomfortable when someone in our vicinity is pushing themselves outside of their comfort zone. We feel the stretch of their soul. And it makes us uneasy because suddenly our souls feel brought under scrutiny, even though it has nothing to do with us. It's like they're a mirror being held up to us. And in the mirror's reflection, we see another, maybe better version of ourselves. I don't know about anyone else, but sometimes it makes me question who is real and who is the reflection. I often try not to consider the answer. And people who set out to conquer things outside of themselves in our shared reality or inside of themselves in their private galaxy of thoughts are typically met with the same trepidation. It's understandable. I think the heroic cycle that's always existed in the stories humans have told, it's part of our mental housekeeping. Sometimes humans gotta climb up into their mind attic, their personal mingy tall, and excise a couple of demons. And that's not always easy, especially for the hero or even the artist who has to orchestrate the hero's journey. So at the end of the game, I'm left with many questions, just like you. What is the Gogolithic mass? Is it bad? What initiated the Scythian's adventure? Maybe the person she's hugging in the dream world is someone she lost a long time ago, but still keeps alive in her memory. Like how sometimes I dream about my cat who passed away cuddling next to me. It's not real, but I feel that connection the next day as if it was. But that's just a whole mind connection I can make to the game. There's a lot of intellectual mind questions that still linger. That's been my favorite part of all this. How you and I have both been experiencing the game on at least 2 levels. It's surface level as a fantasy adventure game with goofy characters and dialogue, and its deeper level of connection with video game history and pop and human culture, and even some dang metaphysics. And I love how we've both taken turns at perceiving the game on that surface level, only to have the other person reveal a meaning on the deeper, metatextual level. It's cool to have someone else's brain working alongside yours when you experience a thing. It's like your aperture gets opened a little bit wider and more cool stuff can get inside. Our brains got to rock alongside each other. No matter where we go next, I'm just happy to be jamming with you.
Hey, thank you for watching and finishing this very long video on Superbrothers Sword and Sworcery EP. We have another video that's shorter, and it's 2 essays Paul and I wrote. I wrote about my favorite games of 2024. That's on the channel right now if you want to check it out. And please subscribe if you want to see more. Paul and I are already working on more long stuff like this and shorter form videos. So if you want to see those, subscribe and let us know if we're doing a good job. Okay. Bye. Thank you.